Hello. Ooh.
Wait, I wanna. Ooh. That's nice.
We're starting right now.
Okay.
This is the talk.
Yeah, let's do it. Talk's over. Bye, guys. See you. This is good. I'm Alex Preston. I'm the creator and director, I guess, of the project. Sure.
I'm Toddy Doof Deef.
Good
Sorry.
name.
I'm so sorry. I'm a game designer and a coder on Hyperlight.
Let's go to the next slide.
Oh, this is me. So rather than doing like a full post-mortem-y thing, we weren't really interested in doing that, but we wanted to cover 4 elements of our experience making and releasing Hyperlight Drifter that felt like unique and special and worth sharing in particular. So you're going to start.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Kickstarter and all the successes and pitfalls and crap that comes with that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about the custom editor that we built inside of the game that we haven't really shown anyone yet, to show like kind of actually how the sandwich was made. Is that an expression? Okay.
Yeah,
and then I'm going to talk about like game design constraints around the fact that our game had no words in it and how we dealt with that.
Yeah. And then I'll close it up by talking about release on multiple platforms and the stress nightmare that was.
Take it away.
Okay. Take a seat. Whoa. Calm down, microphone. So, Kickstarter. Yeah, that's a thing. So, how the Kickstarter blew up. I worked in commercials for years as an illustrator and storyboard artist. I learned about pitching to a variety of groups, how to present a clear message, to look like you know exactly what you're doing even if you don't, which was true of this. Bo, who was prototyping Hyperlight Drifter with me for about 9 months before launch, he made Samurai Gun. He had a lot of friends in the indie games community, and then I myself did as well, like Teddy. We co-founded a space called Glitch City in Los Angeles, and that allowed a lot of access to indies, and by that nature, a lot more word of mouth to the games community at large, including press and all that. So it helped spread pretty quickly because we knew people, and it was nice that they said nice things about the video game. Also, right place, right time. The second half of 2013 was the peak of the Kickstarter bubble. Hyperlight was surrounded by 2 other super high-profile campaigns, and that generated a lot of traffic to our game just by the nature of Kickstarter blowing up. It also helped that Games Press was still covering Kickstarters at that time, and they don't really do that anymore. So, Kickstarter has changed quite a bit over the past few years. So, feeding the beast. Yeah, that's a train. I like that train.
You're a good artist.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you have to speak into the microphone.
Am I not doing it?
I think that microphone's not on.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Ooh, there we go.
Good art.
Cool. So I spent a lot of my time making backer updates every day of the campaign. It ran for 30 days, and I'd sit in bed typing in the morning and in the evening, and sometimes I'd do multiple updates per day, but the idea was to keep everybody engaged as much as I possibly could, and I wasn't really doing anything else except, trying to not be sick. So one of the things that happened too was we blew past our stretch goals in the first week, and I had to quickly develop a lot more. I took a lot of careful consideration when trying to develop them, and the best estimates I could. And in some cases that didn't work out, like the Vita and the Wii U, though we went to great lengths to satisfy all of them. Ultimately, we ended up going above and beyond what we thought we were capable of with all the stretch goals, considering how deep in we went, because, there was like 12 stretch goals, or more than that. I don't know, there's quite a few stretch goals. I haven't even researched my own project. So the other thing that was pretty intense during the campaign was receiving hundreds of messages a week. And that includes dozens of offers to partner up or requests for other campaigns for us to give them a shout out. And I tried to answer all these as best I could because I felt a deep responsibility for everybody who's pitching in, who's a backer, who might be a potential backer, that's really having a lot of faith in us as developers, even though this is my first time around. And so it felt like my responsibility to do that. That's a double-edged sword because that means I'm taking all of my time answering every message by hand. which can be very unproductive. But everyone feels like they're respected, which is something that I strive for. So,
Yes.
that's a dragon. So, at the tail end of the campaign, we had a live stream up in the final hours, and we got a hot stack of pizza delivered from fans, and we had to pay for it because they forgot to. We dressed up and played video games, talked about the future. It was a really good way for us to release some stress in the final moments and some anxieties because we didn't know a lot about the future. And we drew crude portraits of one another, which was nice. And, it was a good time to begin and build our relationship together as a new team. And really, pizza helps bring us all together. So, let's see. Yeah, our campaign ended up with about $645,000 pledged. But this is not the actual total that we took away. Kickstarter takes about 5%. Amazon payment takes another 3%. And then a significant portion of backers did not get processed due to bank errors or credit card errors or them entering their information incorrectly. And so the true estimate is about 584,000. So still a significant amount, but that's a big chunk out. And that's not even including the backer rewards, which takes another huge portion. You see all the pie charts in modern Kickstarters and how they break that stuff out. I wish I had that at the time. So another thing is success before release. That's another double-edged sword. We ended up with a campaign that had a fan base of about 24,000 backers, plus many others around the web. And that was before the game was even halfway done. So this is terrifying. This is my first release. This is our first release as a crew, as a team. And this meant that we had a huge audience that we had to maintain with monthly updates, with tweets, with screenshots, GIFs, videos, and even that limited preview that we did back in 2014. So while having a fan base in place before release is great, it's also a huge undertaking for my time and mental energy to keep up. And so a lot of the development cycle I was spending long hours after making the game, maintaining the Kickstarter backers and that fan base, because they're loyal, and if you actually respect them, then they will feed back into that and contribute back to the community. So it was worth the time, but it was a lot of effort. And it's also difficult to balance, what you want to show the community, because it's a single-player game with a lot of mystery and secrets. So what you can show them, what you can't show them, becomes kind of tenuous. And they're curious, and they want to know what's happening on every part of the project. And you also don't want to be too transparent because you don't want to worry them. And games developing is kind of a harrowing process with a lot of ups and downs. It's not a straight path. So if you're too transparent, then people are going to freak out, and you're going to get 5,000 messages about, what are you fucking guys doing? I can't believe it. And then they want their money back. So this adds an incredible amount of pressure to an already difficult situation. And it's a lot like having 10,000 smaller publishers that you need to keep excited each month. So it's still not over. We're still answering messages every day. Still fulfilling the last set of rewards, and maybe someday I'll finally be finished with it. So I made a lot of mistakes, and here are my highlights. I would have made fewer, simpler rewards and tiers. I think I ended up doing almost 15 of them, and I probably would have kept it down to about 5. Fewer physical goods, because those are a nightmare in some cases. I don't know, we did that Super Nintendo custom cartridge, and while it's amazing and I love it, it was also a lot of work on the side to do that, and that takes away from development. And I would have focused on fewer platforms as a promise. The Ouya, the Vita, and the Wii U were early on promised, but due to lack of source code and other factors that we couldn't account for early in the process, considering it was 2.5 years before we released, it was out of our hands in many ways. And so cancellation of those platforms was a painful experience, and it led to a lot of disappointed backers and disappointment in ourselves. So let's go on to this one. That guy's scary. Stretch those dollars. So we found, as we found out, money goes fast when making a big game over multiple years with 5 full-time employees and several contract workers. So we stretched as best as we could, and we kept the finances simple. We spent as little as possible since we didn't know our actual ship date. It was malleable. We were, a lot of things were up in the air as far as how much time certain things were going to take, certain systems. Teddy will show you some of that stuff too. It would have helped if we'd had a detailed spreadsheet to maybe keep track of that stuff, even though it sounds really boring and tedious. We probably wasted a lot of time going over finances again. And we kept our overhead low. So biggest costs for games development typically are going to be the people that you hire and the facilities you're in, your offices or whatever else. And we mitigated some of that, or a lot of that, by asking team members to, sacrifice their wages in favor of better revenue share. And I mean, it's not like we paid dirt or anything, but it was lean. And it was lean for everybody because we had to make it extend. And then we also shared our space, Glitch City, with other developers. So it was much cheaper than having our own offices, which can be extremely expensive, especially in Los Angeles. So events were a big thing, like PAX and E3, Prime or East. And those can cost a lot of money. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 people there and you have a whole booth, it could be $10,000 or more just to get that up, even for the smallest booth. Even going with Indie Mega Booth being part of that, where they help to support you with costs and with all of the BS that you have to deal with behind the scenes. So they're great, but it's still expensive. And the reason why you go to shows is because it helps to keep us engaged with fans that we maybe don't talk to on the internet, to meet people in real life, and to keep the team motivated and invigorated, because if fans are still excited about the thing that we're making, then we still get to be excited about it. So last thing is budgeting for fun things. It didn't always work out, but we tried to take time off throughout the course of 2.5 years, meaning, we'd go go-karting, we would have team lunches, we'd have team dinners to celebrate certain milestones, to talk about how terrible we were feeling and exhausted we were feeling, just to kind of release in some way or another. And during the final stretch of development, we had some late days and nights. We weren't doing heavy crunch, but we were pushing ourselves pretty deep in, and we had pizza delivered on late days. So again, pizza binds us all. That's the lesson that I have. All right.
Where's me?
Yeah, it's you.
It's me. Hi. I had coffee. Hey, Hyperlight Drifter is a big game. We made a big game. And we went through a lot of pains and processes in how we were making it so that we could make a game that had a huge world that didn't feel like it was repeating, that took advantage of the great art that Alex was making for the environment, and to make the combat scripted in really intricate ways. So I'm going to talk to you about it and show you the things that no one's ever seen before. So we worked in an engine called GameMaker for a couple specific reasons. People are usually surprised because it's not often used for very big games, but there are some. We used it because Bo Blythe, who started the project with Alex, was using that engine already. He'd made Samurai Gun in GameMaker, as well as a ton of other multiplayer games like Zero Space that you should go play. It is an engine focused on 2D, and we were making a 2D game, so that just felt very natural, and it had some things about the way the engine works that you just wouldn't be able to do in something like Unity. And we got support from Yo-Yo. So considering that Bo had worked in the engine for a while, and also thanks to the publicity of the Kickstarter, we had a great relationship with Yo-Yo Games for the whole production. Like, we got to submit priority bugs to the engine because we were finding stuff that other people weren't, because we needed more out of the engine. And they even came by once and helped me work on a port we were doing for an E3 demo. Play Samurai Gun. It's a good game. So this is the GameMaker room editor. This is what we started with. It's a tile-based editor, so you build the world with tiles. And there's a big drop-down list of all the objects in your project, and that's kind of how you assemble the whole world. For us, there were a couple weaknesses. One, we didn't really want the game to feel tile-based, especially if you look at the way Alex was painting the environments. Like, it needed to feel natural and unique and have a certain vibe to it that we couldn't get that way. Also, object scripting is very difficult to do because you can right-click on an object and go to its creation code, and you can make that instance of the object a little different, but you're writing code for everything that you do, and if you want to reference another object, you have to look up its ID number and then plug that in. It's like adding someone as a friend on the Wii.
Beautiful analogy.
Yeah, it is. And GameMaker offered to work with us to like add features, but we felt like we could do it on our own because we totally know what we were doing. Here's a first demo that we made. This was in the fall of 2013, right after the Kickstarter. We made it for Minecon. Basically, I grayboxed this level in the tile editor that they had, and then Alex made a massive Photoshop file with all the art. So we're just like running on top of a big, flat, pretty-looking thing with a couple objects with depth, but not really. You can see a couple things about what I was saying. The environment is very square. And there are like a lot of diamonds and square shapes in the look of the game, but it was hard to get sort of like a ruined feeling for the world, to make things feel crumbled. And we couldn't really do much with scripting, so we just kind of threw a bunch of enemies all over the place, like a shitload of enemies in this room, to try to make it interesting, because we couldn't do different waves and we couldn't do creative things with the scripting. So then we tried a different approach, which was, hey, Alex is working in Photoshop, and we want to basically take the way it looks and bring it into our game. What if we use an exporter and see if we can make a pipeline that includes Photoshop?
Brilliant idea.
It was such a good idea, you guys. So objects had to have certain layer naming conventions so that they could all be exported individually, and then they would be imported into the game based on how we set it up and parsed through with certain depth values and with certain qualities, so we could spawn unique objects that had their own behaviors by naming the layer something very specific. There was a ton of human error, and the iteration was a nightmare. This is the second public demo we made a few months later for an art gallery called Giant Robot in Los Angeles. So it looks kind of the same to the untrained eye, like there's more organic shapes going on a little bit. We were able to do a few more things with scripting, but like all of these pillars that you're dashing across were exported individually, and at any time Alex needed to change one of them, or we needed to change the size for level design, we had to go back into Photoshop and then re-export the whole thing. It was just not going to happen. It was really, really bad. So then we made our own editor, and we're presenting it now. Bo had this weird idea that I remember shot down. I was like, we can't do that. But then he's like, let me try. So I almost ruined Hyperlight Drifter.
Typical Teddy.
Yeah, typical me. Let's build an editor inside of the game. We didn't have the ability to like extend GameMaker the way you can with Unity and build your own menus. But we had full control inside of the video game. So once you click play and you build it, we built an editor inside the actual game. So while you're playing, you're making the game. So let's walk through some of the features of this editor. Oh, good, it's bright, you can see, good. I think that the unique elements, the most unique ones that made Hyperlight feel how it feels or play how it plays and support what we wanted to do were two things. A free sketching tool, which I will show you, and object menus that were unique for every instance to help us create custom tools for whatever we wanted to do super quickly. So this is going to be super, I'm really excited. It's game development. Okay.
Blast through it.
Let's go. Here is the sketch tool. It has different layers for the wall, floors, and shadows. I'm just going to kind of show you the floor. You have different brush sizes, so you can change the brush that you're working with. We tried to emulate some elements of like Photoshop. You could enter in a manual size if you wanted to. There were different stroke styles, so you pick your size, and then you can either be drawing with a square, or we made a triangle brush so you can get nice diagonals cleanly. You can change from tiled to stroke, which changes whether it's very locked to the grid or not. And it's very simple. You just click on floor, and then you start right-clicking to delete, and you can make holes in the world, and the collision updates automatically. So our collision mask for the floor is just a huge fucking image. And GameMaker did not approve, but it totally worked fine.
It's very efficient.
Yeah, they're like, don't do that. You should make a bitmap. And I was like, I don't know what that is, so we're going to use a sprite. He's like, oh, you just make an app in Visual Studio. I was like, I don't know how to use Visual Studio. We use GameMaker. But what was great about this is that if I draw that hole back in, it uses the tiled texture that Alex made for that given room, and you can assign the texture through the editor up there on the top right. It says BGC Floor Workshop. That's the texture. So if you draw that back in, it automatically tiles perfectly, and it looks just like it did at the beginning. So you don't have to like re-art, and you can reuse those floors for the whole sections of the world. We also had a little notes layer. So shadows was a layer that we didn't really need till the end. So designers could just write notes to themselves in like whatever color they wanted, and just like for each other, and like leave cute little smiley faces or whatever they wanted to do. And they could hide them if they wanted to.
We drew a lot of dicks.
There's just like one. I feel like we probably banned that. Anyway. So we had an object system. This was for being able to put lots of different art into the world. Obviously, you're making a game, you're reusing assets, but we didn't want it to feel that way. We wanted it to feel natural. So we show a sprite for every single object in the game, which is much better than a drop-down menu. So you can instantly see, based on what section of the world you're in, what you want to paint with. I can just plop down some trees, and I have the sprite index randomized, so it'll drop down different trees if you just kind of want to get randomization. It's like Speed Tree. Basically, we built Speed Tree. You can group select, you can drag them around. We also had the ability to do different layers for the scenery. So for example, one of the unique settings was the floor. If you want to put something on the floor so that it's drawn in the same frame, so it's more efficient, shadows are cast onto it. It's on the bottom of everything in terms of ordering. So you can just drop down a bunch of stuff to let Alex like mix up that tiled floor so it didn't look so tiled. And then you can just plop the drifter in because you're playing the video game, and everything has been updated. So you can run on that floor, and your shadow casts on it. Those trees have collision, and you're pretty much good to go. Like something like Photoshop, we built a layers system because, holy shit, there were a lot of objects in the world, especially with all those scenery pieces. So we built this layer system. You can mouse over the layer that you're on, and it'll highlight all the objects on that layer. You can hide entire layers by clicking on a radio button next to the layer. You can name them whatever you wanted. So like Rich Vreeland, Disaster Piece. Hi, Rich. Like, hi. He could name his own layer, for example, whatever he wanted. It's probably just sound most of the time, right? And that was preserved for him. That was like his layer. So we didn't get into any conflicts with that. And then you could like zoom out and see the entire world and highlight things en masse. So you could really just get a quick look at what you were dealing with when the level got complicated. So, scripting. This is the object window. Every object had unique properties. I'm going to show you a couple of them. But they all had the same scripting system, which I'll show you live in pre-recorded video. I wanted to do it live, but you're not supposed to do that at GDC. Let me show you the camera lock object. The camera lock object is how we control the movement of the camera in the world. So normally it's just following the drifter and the way the game plays. But if we were on the inside of a space and we wanted to hide a secret, or you're just in one room and we don't want to show you the next door room, you can lock the camera. So this has a unique menu. I can click Set, and now you see there's a pink frame around the window. That's the camera framing that it uses for how the camera is going to lock. So now if I run around as the drifter, the camera is no longer going to move. It's just going to stay there. Okay? However, sometimes you don't want to just purely lock it. You just kind of want to block it on one side. So I have little arrows in the window here that I can disable so that it only actually stops the camera in one direction. So I can turn them off, and now there's only a pink line on the right, which means if I run up against that, the camera won't go past that line. But if I run off to the left, the camera is free to move any direction. So you can see it's drifting up and down a little bit. And if I go off to the left, the camera will go left as well. Boom. Let's look at doors, and I'll talk about the link system, which is super crucial for the way we scripted the game. This is going to go by pretty fast, but you can link objects together. I've got a door object in the scene, and I'm going to create a region, which is just a space that checks to see if the drifter's in it. I'm going to put it where I want it, and that's where the door will be triggered. I'm going to link this door, so I'm going to press L, and now I have a little flashy line, and I can click on the region. Now the door is looking at the region for just a true-false state. So if you look at this window here, you can see I can assign the room. So there's an autocomplete for all the rooms listed in the project. So you can just type in a few of the words that you remember that are in the room. It shows you the dimensions of the room. And if the room has other doors in it, which is what you're really looking for, it'll show them. So this room here has 3 little white boxes. Those are doors. And I can click on the one that I actually want to show up at when I walk through this one and exit my current room. So I'm going to pick the one on the right. and that's going to take me there. I can also pick like what direction the drifter is going to walk when they exit the door, just so that the spatiality feels consistent. And then once this gets triggered, we're going to go to the next room. I'll just show you this very quickly. Pause. So the scripting system is down at the bottom of every object's unique window. It says case scripting here. 0 means false. And the door is looking at that region. So we've got highlighted this thing called links case true, which basically means when this guy here, when this region is true, I am true, and I'll send the drifter through. That rhymed. So yeah, that's just how you go to a new room. A last thing about the editor was that we felt it was important to keep it usable. Usability, UI, UX. Casey Hunt, who was doing a lot of level design along with Alex and later Lisa Brown, had the idea to make icons for it so that as we developed it and added to it, because I was like making changes to the editor up until the last month before we released. So when we added new features, it needed to be clear. It needed to be sectioned off and nice. So he made cute little icons. And it just made the process of doing like the thousands and thousands of actions, like Alex's really high APM, like real good for actually using the tool. Cool. That's the end of the editor talk. I'll probably try to put up like an actual live video at some point, so you could do that. We'll put our Twitters up at the end so you can see if you're curious to see like a full live action, really exciting super demo. Section 3, I want to talk about no words. We made a decision. The decision had kind of already been made, or it was in your head already, to kind of like, you didn't want to do a lot of reading, you didn't want dialogue in the game. And so we kind of made a commitment as a team during the Kickstarter campaign that we would have no words in the game, or in the world at all. We wanted to keep it just kind of focused on the imagery and the feeling of the environment. And that's what we wanted to do. And that was going to extend to everything. So menus and the stores you go to, no words. Almost. There were a few places we compromised. We ended up compromising in like the first 10 minutes for tutorialization because we just really didn't want that to get screwed up. And there were some things that it was very hard to force with level design. I think it's possible we could have gotten around this, but it would have taken way, way more time and playtesting on the tutorial stuff. So we didn't teach everything. We did leave the player up to figure out some of the basic actions, but other things like healing, we just wanted you to know how to do it. So we set up the conditions under which you would need to, and then told you, like, push that button and you can heal. But it was non-diegetic, if you're familiar with that term. It means like the text is in the game, but it's not in the world. So we kind of justified it that way. Obviously, the pause menu, too. Like, we didn't want to have to figure out how to do our credits without words. Like we'd put all the backers in the fucking credits, so that would have been a lot of faces that you'd have to draw or something. Yeah, and there was one thing in the world that had a sort of language to it, and it was these mysterious pillars, but they weren't the core goal of the game, and it wasn't like written English, so we figured it allowed us to put some depth into like some of the secrets that you could find in the world without really being English. So those are the exceptions that we made. But I want to do a deep dive here on the shops and how we dealt with that, because we did a ton of iterations on the UI for the shops, how they worked and how they looked. So Alex and I going back and forth. So I'm going to show you like everything we realized we had to teach the player for just a basic interaction and how we did it, and how I hope we think that we did it. So 1, this is a sword upgrade. So we need you to know you're buying a sword upgrade for your sword. This one's pretty easy. It's like you put a sword on the shop, and then when you go inside of the store, there's a guy holding a sword and another little kid holding a sword. Don't give swords to kids. And the sword's on the wall, and then when you go to the store, here he is holding a sword. There's a sword icon. Like, it's idiot-proof, hopefully. There's also a little box on the drifter icon there that is highlighting the sword, so that moves around as well. That one's easy. 2, the upgrade will do this. We thought about having like a test ground where you could try them out, but then we had to communicate that you're trying it out and that you haven't like just gotten it, and how do we give something to you temporarily without explaining that? It had like way more questions than answers, so we decided just like, let's make an animated GIF. So we did, and it was done. 3, there are other sword upgrades. This seems pretty easy, right? You just have to like put them in a list, but in terms of visual communication, we needed it to be very clear that that's what you were doing, since there were no prompts whatsoever. So we used really obvious line work and a different GIF for every sword upgrade, so you could see they're all different. This starts to get tricky. 4, you will spend your money. This is like the most important one, because money is pretty scarce in Hyperlight. So if someone spends their money and they're not happy about that, that's on us. So a couple things we did. We mirrored it completely with the loadout menu, with your inventory. So on the right there, that's the menu you can go to at any time during the game to see what you have. And on the left, there is the store. It's the same assets. It's actually the same code, too, with just some different statements in there. So you can see the money box on the bottom right of both. It's the same box, same coloring, same icon, and it's the exact same position on the screen. So we're doing everything we can to make that familiar to you when you go to a store for the first time. 5, you will spend this much money. Like, also kind of surprisingly hard to do, especially when you can't put like a number. We ended up finally figuring out that we would just double teach it. So next to the thing that you're buying, we put, this is going to cost 3 of these. And then over in your box, we also show that it's flashing 3. So hopefully you get it. And people did. As a sub-problem, or a variety of that, hey, you don't have enough money. We opted for, like, let's be really obvious. So we turned it red. Red means bad. It still costs 3, but now you see 3 red glowing things. Pretty simple, but you'd be surprised how many iterations this took to make feel natural. It also squeaks at you in like a really terrible way if you try to buy it. It's like the worst. I think I warped the sound or something. You bought it already. This is another variant, right? So it's not immediately obvious, but yeah, we highlighted the icons. So the icons are only on a skill if you've purchased it or you have it highlighted. Also, if you're on the skill up top there that you've already purchased, it's grayed out. The line work is really dull. And it makes another really unfriendly squeaking noise, but like less unfriendly because like you have it. So that's a good thing. This is how you buy it. This is another case where like technically we put iconography or words, I guess, if you consider the A button like a word. So we ended up putting buttons in there. We make the button responsive to your touch, and we went with a long press because that was consistent with the way you interact with everything else in the world. So we'd already taught that, so we just needed to be consistent about it. And actually, we changed the input of the game in like the last month because of the menu. Because interacting with things used to be B in the world. It was like closest to your dash, and it felt natural when you're in the game. However, B is like always cancel. So we finally gave up on trying to solve that communication problem and actually like change the input for the menus and for the entire game so that interacting with things is now Y or triangle if you're on a PlayStation controller. One thing we didn't really do, but we tried to account for, is that you can't undo. Like I said, money is rare, and the game autosaves, and you can't have like multiple save files for the same game. So that's really scary, is someone to buy something and then feel like they just wasted like 5 hours of effort to get those 3 coins they just spent. But we tried to accommodate for it by again, making it painfully obvious that you're buying it and what you're buying. And also, we don't save. So the shops themselves don't save. There's no auto-saving when you purchase. It doesn't save until you leave the shop. So we were hoping that would be enough. And we didn't hear a lot of complaints about that.
Not too many.
Yeah, not too many. So that's proof. That's factual proof that we did it right. One last thing about wordless design. We had to communicate goals. Like, what are you doing in this game? What is the point of this? Why am I here? What do I want? Where do I go? Because it's a Zelda structured game. So you can go freely throughout the world. Why? Like, where are you going? There's no one to be like, hey, there's a thing in a tower. You got to go to the tower. Like, we can't say that. Alex and the art team, when making the opening cutscene, did a lot of things. So I'm going to kind of walk through some of the beats that we hit in order to try and reinforce this before we open you up to the whole world and we no longer have control of you as a player. So in the cutscene, one of the first images are these 4 pillars on each side of the world, and there's this thing in the middle, so we're starting to establish this theme of 4, and then this other thing in the middle. It's very vague. This is not like tutorialization, but we're trying to put it in your head. We also have a diamond shape here that's going to be recurring. There's a scene where 4 towers come up, and then a 5th tower comes up, and that's one-to-one with what you actually end up doing, is going around and making 4 towers go up, and then going down a 5th tower. we reinforce the diamond, and then it's kind of separated into pieces, and that the drifter really wants this. So you're the drifter's like, I want this. I think you guys did this scene like so many times, right? Just to get the hand to look like it was reaching.
Yeah, we actually said, I want this, just like that every time.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry to the voice actors that we ended up not using the work from. It was really good. OK, so once the cutscene's over and you play some of the initial tutorialization, you end up in the drifter's apartment, and we were almost losing control of you. We have you for like 30 more seconds. So here's what happens. You walk, we stop you, we show you this diagram, which is like literally this is the whole message of the game. Like right there, that's, hey, do that. And you can also go and open it up again. But this diagram is telling you how to beat the game. It's saying there are these diamonds, you're going to get a triangle out of it, and you're going to put it in a bigger diamond. And that's like the best we could do. But we're going to reinforce that over and over and over, and we ended up changing the design of a lot of the items in the game to avoid them being diamond-shaped and preserve the diamond for the main goals of the game. So diamond means do that to win, like everywhere. Then you leave the apartment, and you walk downstairs, and once again, we take control away for like the last time. So we're going to lock the camera here. We've just left the apartment. We're going to go, look, a diamond. It's the same one.
I can't see it.
Well, you covered it with grass. You did that. So you see it. It points at it. There's a dog on it. People like looking at dogs. There are these black crows, and we use those later on to kind of reinforce that's the main thread of your illness. And there you are. We also reinforce this as you go. So hey, I found that diamond thing. It's a diamond. And when you pick it up, it's going to open up the world map, and it's just going to like slowly walk you over. Like, hey, do you want to know what's happening? You got a thing. Look, a triangle going into a diamond. And let's just like take a minute to show you what that means. And then we literally just pan over and go, hey, look, the diamond in the middle, the one you saw at the beginning. Boom. You added a pixel to it. And we just reinforce that every time. And then ultimately, you're just standing on this all the time. It's in the center of the main town. You're going to see it over and over and over. We just thought we would do that through repetition, and that seemed to work. Take it away, Alex.
All right.
Totally on time.
All right, well, I'm going to talk about the fun stuff now.
It's fine, whatever.
Ooh, I remember this. All right, so that's my hair. The plan. We were crazy. We thought, hey, why not put the game out on 5 damn platforms at the same time? That'll be a good idea. It's not. I can tell you that for sure. So we talked to, friends, and we talked to people like Cappy and Supergiant, because indies talk to all indies. And they've just people who have experience releasing on a lot of different platforms, and they all told us, don't do that. It's a good way to kill yourself. So we didn't, and we ended up only releasing, we staggered our release on just PC, Mac, and Linux, which was a lot in itself, and then months later ended up releasing on PS4 and Xbox One. They do. So we, after we decided on the staggered release, we had to actually decide on a release date for the PC build. And we'd gone through a lot of internal testing with friends and all that. And we felt comfortable with the general timeline for spring, and said maybe March is the day that is the month that we actually release this thing on Steam and Humble Bundle, and GOG. However, even with our level of comfort, it was still terrifying to commit to this. Deadlines, public announcements, and press coverage make this real. And we had been developing this game for several years, kind of with the peace of mind that we had whatever time we really needed. But then that timeline kind of accelerates as soon as you say, hey, guess what? This is when it's coming out. And then it's time to freak out and get your stress amplified by 100-fold. I had a valve replacement procedure performed on my heart in November of 2015, and so that added a lot of fear and stress. How much time was I going to be out? Was I going to die? Let's find out. So also some tests. We began playtesting a very rough version of the game. The entire, like it was actually strung together at that point, late in 2015 with close friends and trusted sources, other developers. And then we had a true QA series done, a couple of months before release with the Research Centaur in San Diego. Those dudes are really great. They're part of the Behemoth. And they help indies to do QA for the games. So we were down to the wire, and it was scary times. So that's a GIF. I'm just going to leave that going for the entire time. So complications. The night of release on the night before release, leading up to midnight launch, we had some problems with our keys, specifically for backers, and I won't get into gory detail of it all, but it delayed our launch by several hours plus. And, we were having trouble making sure that it was uploading to Steam properly, and suddenly the internet was grinding to a halt, and just like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And the internet was starting to freak out, saying like, why isn't it live at midnight? And we ended up there on that couch well into the evening, and I think we launched at like 4 or 5 in the morning or something ridiculous. We did have a bit of relief with distribution on keys later on with BackerKit, so if you're doing a Kickstarter, use BackerKit. It's really, really helpful. Don't go the route that we went and try and distribute it manually. Bad idea. So post-release. So your suspense is now dispelled because we did indeed release the game and I didn't die yet. So once we released, it was a stress reliever in some regards, but then there's the added tasks of fixing bugs. And for a solid month plus post-release, we were sitting there hammering away at the builds because there are issues on the endless variations of hardware that people have. Just for a PC alone, like there are a lot of peripherals. And then considering Mac and Linux or other builds, like there's just a whole host of things that you can't really test for, even with a good test outfit like the Research Centaur. It's just there's too many configurations to account for. So lesson 1 was engines can be fickle. Lesson 2 is people have tons of peripherals plugged in that can get in the way, like extra keyboards or luxurious imported audio hardware or potatoes. Or 3, don't push your new build to the main branch before testing it to death, unless you love screams, threats, and other angry emails from the internet, which I love. So, porting to consoles.
That's you.
It is me. So PS4 and Xbox One were both far more difficult than PC and Mac and Linux for a lot of different reasons. Bo and Teddy had kind of checked out at that point. Teddy went to go work at Squaresoft, and Bo was going to do his own thing. We were all very tired and going our separate ways. So it was up to me and Aaron Melcher, who was our port guy for Linux and Mac, and the kind folks at Yo-Yo Games who build our engine to make it happen on these 2 platforms. Certification is a fun thing. So if you don't know what certification is, it's the process you have to go through in order to put a game on a PlayStation or an Xbox, and this involves a lot of different steps. So it's daunting, and so there's a lot of paperwork that you have to go through. There is, hundreds of tiny little requirements that you have to be considerate of on every individual platform, and there are complex rules that differ from platform to platform, region to region. So if you're going to release in Europe, it's different than when you release in North America, and that's different when you release in Japan, and that's just on PlayStation. So it's a bit much. And these platforms are sometimes using older internal systems that have been retrofitted to work with modern games development, so their backends are kind of clunky at times, or very slow or broken. And it's difficult to proceed, and there's just a lot of back and forth and long times for waiting for a response because they have a lot of other people that they're dealing with at the time. You're not the highest priority at all moments. So without a lot of that control that Steam gives you, you're kind of left in the wind, or you're left to really pushing hard to get your rep to help you out. So another thing is ratings. We need to get proper ratings. So these tasks range from easy, like the ASRB for North America, which you just kind of fill out a form and they're like, yeah, you're fine, you're good. And it ranges to expensive and difficult, like PEGI and COB for Europe and Australia, where it can cost thousands of dollars and take several weeks, if not months sometimes. And then extremely challenging, like Sero for Japan and Asia, because you need a Japanese business to help you out there, and there's a lot of translation problems, and that's just really difficult. So we had to delay, as an example of what can go wrong, is we had to delay our Australian launch for the Xbox because we didn't have the proper rating for it, because I didn't know that you had to have a specific rating just for Xbox that you didn't have to have on PlayStation for just that region. It was unclear to me at the time going through those pages of documentation, and it was too late once we released to be like, oh, whoops, let's push it out there. So we also tested and failed multiple times on each platform, and for really stupid reasons. Anything from your UI is not expressly saying this PlayStation logo correctly, or you have some crossover here from this controller, you can't have that UI layout there, or this button isn't pixel perfect. Those things will get in the way and make you fail cert at times. Sometimes they're more forgiving, sometimes they're not. It depends on the region, it depends on the time of the day. So we pushed really hard, and we got our game onto the systems in about 3 weeks. And that was a process that typically takes 2 times longer or more. And there's extreme stress since we worked many late nights, supremely early mornings, because I was in Los Angeles and Yo-Yo Games is out in Europe and Sony Europe is out in Europe. And so trying to communicate between these different entities at different times of the day and communicate all these things and then wait for responses from multiple individuals, it's like a cascading effect where it just gets infinitely more complicated than it needs to be. I was basically balancing too many timelines at once, so my recommendation is don't do this. So we pushed it so that we could make it out before the deluge of major releases in August and October and November. And so we ended up releasing at the end of July. And there are slots, there are only specific slots that they allot for specific times in the week, like Tuesdays on PlayStation consoles. And so those slots also correspond with their own internal QA testing, so they have to make sure that you schedule that properly, that you pass it. Then you need to schedule your release date, and you need to have a buffer in between that of 3 or 4 weeks in some cases. So coordinating all that, making sure that all worked, was a goddamn nightmare. So in the end, all that stuff was only really possible because we had excellent reps, and at Sony and Microsoft in Europe and America, and we leaned on them quite a bit to get this stuff through, because this is our first time releasing on these platforms, and it's extremely challenging. So they carried us through like little babies. But it was nice, and we were lucky to have such incredible people with us. So lesson 4 is hug your reps. So a bit of a wrap up. Release is terrifying. We still got through it, even with all the bumps in the road, but it is a scary thing no matter what, no matter how prepared you think you're going to be. Consoles need a lot of time, and there are big challenges, like I was describing, and it's not going to net you typically as many units as a Steam release is going to, unless there's some sort of exclusivity or promotional tie-in. But for us, it was worth it. And, I would have changed some things, but I would have definitely released on the platforms. Sales per platform, just as a basic informational tool. Our PC builds, particularly on Steam, did the best by far and away. Followed by PS4, then Xbox, and then about 5% on Mac, and less than a percentage point for Linux. So, I think that's probably true for a lot of releases who do multi-platform. So platforms and the people who run them want to see you succeed. Nearly everyone that we worked with on the Microsoft and Sony side for these things and for our engine, it's in all of our best interests to get this game working and get it in the best shape it can be in, because they make money and we make money, and they don't want to look bad and we don't want to look bad. And if you push and you stress and you don't be an asshole about it, they'll be kind to you and get you through. The final lesson is hire more help next time. Maybe get a few extra port people to do work instead of doing it all yourself. Hearts. I think that's it.
Questions?
Nobody has questions.
Are there microphones? There's microphones.
Hey. All right. Can you briefly explain how you keep the world map UI and like the whole world itself in sync, especially if you have to like cut a section and make sure the world map is in sync with that?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Go for it.
It was really, like we did some interesting design there. We did it by hand. So like every time a room changed, the artists had to, like they would change, like Alex would change the world map, like, or Cosimo, the artist you were doing with, would change the actual world map. And then the way the Drifter coordinates work is for every single room in the game, I think there are like 300 of them or something.
132.
I felt like 300. Let's say 300. Well, there's 2 coordinates for every room, so that's like almost 300 coordinates.
That's true.
I had to log an X and Y value on the image of that map. So we're like, okay, you're standing here, and the world map isn't exactly 1-to-1, so what's the best communication I can give you, like next to a landmark or something for you standing there? And it's just like X, 426, Y, 622. And I did that, I redid that like, not that many times, because I stubbornly refused to do it until everything was done, but you can't really do that. So I probably redid the whole thing like three times. But it took like a day. It was just a really bad day.
Yeah. The answer is really stupidly. We did it really stupidly.
It's fine.
Thank you, though.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey. I'm just wondering, like, what's your upcoming project? Because I looked at your website, and you're asking for very technical artists this time.
Oh,
So I'm assuming it's going to be AAA quality.
That's a big assumption. No, it's not going to be AAA quality. We're still pretty indie. Teddy is over at Squaresoft, so he's not at Heart Machine anymore. But on my end, you know, we're hiring up. We're using UE4, so we're doing a lot of fancy things with the next game, but no details on that for quite a while.
Okay, so okay. What next question is, what is indie to you? How do you define indie? Is it just a label?
How do you define indie?
How I define indie is, all right, I'll try not to be offensive, but indie is like the extreme form of the big business AAA side, you know, and the south side. So I think indie to me, it's like, I have this idea, I have this passion, but I want you guys to understand my passion, and if you don't understand, then yeah, I'll be heartbroken. And I want to make money, yet I talk about that it's not about the money, but I want to make money. So like, it's like this teeter-totter thing. So I just want to find like a sweet spot.
I have opinions.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have opinions. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, first of all, there are technical things that you sometimes have to set for, like, if you're running the IGF, then you have to set up certain constraints, like you're independently owned or whatever.
Okay.
But, like, I mean, personally, I've made games in AAA and not, and now I'm at a studio where we're, like, AAA, but the studio is only 37 people, and my team is 6 people, so it's, like, development is the same. Everyone needs money. Like, everyone cares. Like, there are way easier ways to make money than making video games. So, like, nobody goes into, like, AAA game development to, like, cash out. So, like, there's a huge gray area. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
the only answer.
Cool.
I think the terminology is just flawed because I mean, AAA can mean a million different things also. And it's like, okay, Ubisoft is making AAA games, but they have thousands of people working on their games across the entire world. Whereas other AAA studios are just, you know, one studio making this thing with 100 people. You know, like The Witcher was made with much fewer people than Ubisoft, but that's still considered AAA.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Hey, how'd you guys handle the community when dealing with difficulty? of the game?
Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to repeat the question. So what was, how do we handle the community?
Yeah, when dealing with difficulty and like getting feedback to release.
When dealing with difficulty and all that, I mean, it was a lot of fine-tuning internally before we released. There were obviously places where it's like, people make great points or videos or long explanation emails about why this sucks. And so we take that all into account and discuss it internally and figure out what our best route is. And like, was our intention clear? Was it something that maybe we're too good at the game already and we don't see what they're seeing? Is it paced well with the rest of the game? So there's a lot of factors that we look at when it comes to difficulty. It's not one easy answer. It's just a lot of careful consideration on everybody's part.
Okay. As a supplement to that, like shout out to Alex for setting a really good tone with our backers and with the whole community of like very deep honesty and just being forthcoming about things. So like anytime we were dealing with something post-release or even pre-release, or when like we made changes they didn't like or something, or we made an announcement they didn't like he just said why. It's like, here's what we're deciding and here's why we decided it. And by and large, like the vast majority of our backers were super cool and very supportive and understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Hey guys, big fan. You guys were one of my 2 favorite games last year, and I just want to thank you for that first.
Thank you.
Design question. Why did you guys decide to allow players to choose the dungeons that they go to instead of having more of a linear progression?
I don't love linear games as much as I love more open designs. I mean, I still love some linear games for sure, but for me personally, I just want to design more open places that you can explore because I like an adventure. I like choice.
Yeah, I thought it was really challenging, or it was cool that the challenge was just different, not increasingly difficult.
Right.
And like, so it was a really cool way to do it. But I'm assuming some players probably went the wrong way in terms of like what skills to learn in the right order. So were there any challenges with that?
Yeah, I mean, we try and communicate certain things visually and with audio cues and stuff like that to be like, maybe go this direction first, or maybe go that direction first, because this direction's a little bit harder, or it's maybe easier to understand this pathway. But for the most part, it is open to explore in any direction. There's not a wrong direction to go to.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Hi. Looking at the editor, I find some similarities with GameMaker 2, or what the things are they doing on GameMaker 2. Do you think it influenced, or you know if it influenced in any way the next version of GameMaker with the editor you do?
Oh, whether we influenced the new GameMaker? I mean, we were really loud about certain features that we needed over time, especially when the game got big. Like they sort of pushed forward an experimental new sound streaming system because we needed that because Rich was building the music with layers, and we wanted to be playing multiple files that were synced perfectly at the exact same time and that he could fade in and out, and they didn't have that. And it was too much of a memory load to be running like 5 tracks at a time. So I don't know anything about GameMaker 2 because we, like at a certain point when they started talking to us about it, we're like, no, we're not changing engines in the middle. We don't, like, that's awesome. We don't care what you're doing, because we're going to use this one. So,
okay. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more quick question, and then we got to cut out.
Okay, this one's more of a curiosity about your tools and pipeline. A, did you guys, as indies, have somebody playing the role of producer? And B, how did you guys manage builds? Like, how are you handling and recording your bugs, etc.?
On the producer side, I mean, we all kind of played that role. I was leading the way on that, but I relied on Teddy, and I relied on Casey, and I relied on everybody to be self-sufficient and also participate in producerial thought process and, marking up calendars and all that stuff. So we all just had to be aware.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of project planning, like we tried a few things in terms of keeping things organized. We tried a spreadsheet, and then Casey was like, I fucking can't stand spreadsheets. He was like, I don't want to look at this. And I was like, well, if you don't want to look at it, it's not going to work because people need to look at it. So then we did that like thing in Photoshop where we made little playing cards for every feature. It had like a sprite on it. I was like, isn't this fun? Production is fun.
But we don't use it.
But then we didn't use it, and we didn't update the document, so we ended up at a giant wall of Post-its. So like at a certain point, about a year before release, we finally knew enough about what the full game was that we just wrote everything on a Post-it and we put on the wall. And
including
it was like,
bugs?
Not including bugs.
Okay.
And so, but the thing is, everything was a Post-it, and it was whatever, like manila colored, and we replaced it with the same post-it in green when it was done, so you could see how far along we were, and we didn't green anything until it was like effectively bug-free, sorta. Bug tracking at the end, we just like kept a list in Asana. We used Asana for bug tracking.
Nice, thanks.
Mine is really quick. How come the drifter has a house? Isn't he a drifter?
That's not his house.
Yeah, it's the other guy. It's the other
It's the
person's
other guy.
house.
It's the other guy's apartment.
Oh, he's crashing then. All right.
Yeah. He's a bum. I think that's it. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys, for coming.
Thank you.